Since the very beginning of Five Nights at Freddy's, from the moment the production of the movie was announced, we have waited 8 long years for this. And I can finally say that I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It feels like a fever dream. This doesn't feel like this should even be happening, but it has. It's real. So, as you can guess, I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movie on its release day here in the United Kingdom, October 25th. We got it early, America, suck it! And I'm not going to prolong things here, I'm just going to get straight to the big question. Is the movie good? Yes! It is very good. Although, this is coming from a Five Nights fan here, which is the target audience for this movie. Some people would say otherwise, but then again, they don't know anything. But this movie was enjoyable throughout the whole film. I was sitting in that cinema for the first time with the biggest dumb grin on my face the entire time, and I enjoyed every second of it. There's a lot about the movie that I loved, which I will go into more detail soon. But from the set design of the pizzeria was so awesome. The actors performed their hearts out to these roles. Josh Hutcherson as Mike, he was amazing. Absolutely nailed the role. Elizabeth Lail as Vanessa, she was fantastic. And of course Matthew Lillard as Steve Raglan. Well, we all know he was actually William Afton. Yeah, top casting. He absolutely smashed it. He stole the show. And then of course the animatronics made by Jim Henson's Creature Shop were out of this world. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad they didn't do them CGI because that wouldn't have done them justice. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack. We will literally be here all week. However, this movie was not perfect. By all means, it did have its flaws. There were things that I wish they could have done differently, and I will go over that soon. But this is probably as spoiler-free as this video is now gonna get. So if you still haven't watched the movie and you're watching this video now, I do recommend you click off this video now, because I will be talking spoilers. So if you are still here, let's just get into the review, I guess. So, if you remember at the time when filming had just began, I made a predictions video of what is going to happen in the movie, and I'm now gonna go over which predictions did and did not happen. So, my first prediction on my bingo card was FNAF YouTuber cameos. Did it happen? Yes! We got some cameos, baby! We had the likes of tdoca, Razbowski, 8-Bit Ryan, and Baz, and many other FNAF content creators on an Employee of the Month board that is in front of the office, and we did get to have a closer look at that in tdoca, Raz, Ryan, and Baz's vlogs when they got to visit the set. So we got a closer look at that and the other YouTubers that were on that board. It's a very minor cameo, and you know, it's hardly noticeable in the film. There's probably only one shot where you get probably about a second worth of time to look at the Employee of the Month board to see them, but it's a cool little detail. It's great to see them there. But then we move on to some of the bigger cameos. We of course had the likes of Corey Kenshin as a taxi driver, which we saw from the trailer when I did my reaction to that. And then we ended up getting MatPat himself. That one I honestly was not expecting, but by God, we had the man himself, Game Theory, in the movie. We saw him quite early on in the film, and he was a waiter in a diner that was called Sparky's. I see what you did there, you cheeky boys. And don't even get me started on the fact that they actually made him say, "Just a theory." A game theory! Up next was Matthew Lillard carries the movie, which kinda I'm in the middle for that. There's not a definite answer for this prediction, as Matthew Lillard actually didn't have a lot of screen time in this movie. So I can't really say he carried the movie. However, with the little amount of screen time that he actually had in this film, he definitely stole the show. There wasn't enough of him in the movie. That's one of my first complaints and flaws about this film. There was not enough Afton. Next was referencing past tragedies like the Bite of 83. Nope, didn't happen. Next up was Scott Cawthon will reprise his role as the phone guy. And it did not happen. That could have been an excellent opportunity to hear the man himself one more time in the movie. However, Steve Raglan was our phone guy replacement. I am a big fan of them implementing some of the phone guy's lines into the script as Steve gives Mike the rundown of the job. He makes some callbacks to some of the iconic lines that Scott says as phone guy, such as,
"I will catch you on the flip side."
See you on the flip side.
So I like that they did that. Speaking of William Afton though, next prediction was that he murders the 5 missing children. I mean, we technically don't see it happen, but it's mentioned several times throughout the movie. The closest we got to actually seeing it was in the opening title sequence, with it being in the 8-bit minigame style, and actually seeing Afton in the spring bodysuit luring the 5 children one by one. So, yeah, I'm gonna count it. And by the way, I don't think there was a better way they could have opened the movie than with that title sequence, because that was awesome. Next was that Foxy is gonna have the least screen time. And I was wrong. They really wanted to show him off in this movie. Dare I say, I think Foxy actually had the most screen time out of all the animatronics. I could definitely see they really wanted to show him off and use him to his full potential. Which makes sense, because with Foxy being a full animatronic and being puppeteered by 6 people, they wouldn't want to let him go to waste, and they definitely had fun with him. Next is that 90% of the movie will have Easter eggs. Yes! There were a lot of Easter eggs and hidden secrets in this movie. I was sitting in that cinema pointing things out almost every minute. There were loads of things to see that referenced something from the games. We got a full-on Balloon Boy cameo, for crying out loud. Throughout the movie, a little Balloon Boy figure appears, scaring Mike and the living daylights out of me. That's one thing I want to point out real quick. How out of all the jump scares in this movie did this scrunkly little dingus scare me the most? I also want to point out as well that Carl was wearing a Midnight Motorist shirt, which is a minigame from Five Nights at Freddy's 6. That's a cool Easter egg. Okay, and next up was Mike explores the pizzeria. Yes, it is literally the very first thing Mike does when it is his first night working at Freddy's. After he settles down in the office and watches the security guard training tape, he then takes a stroll around the pizzeria and, he checks out Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy. Enough said. Now, I did a little bit of tweaking here to the bingo list from this point onwards, as I felt some of the old ones weren't really that great. So the next one I made is a new prediction, which is that the animatronics will have voices. Technically, no. But at the same time, yes. Because Foxy does do his iconic, his diddly-dum thing. Although it wasn't the exact same one, but it was in fact a newer rendition of it, which was actually performed by Kellen Goff. That was awesome to see. But yeah, I'm kinda right with this one. But at the same time, we didn't actually hear any of the animatronics, properly talk. So that one's kind of 50-50. Then we go back to one of our original predictions, with the animatronics looking like their Help Wanted designs. And, yeah, I was kinda right. As I said before, with what I meant by that is mainly just by their colorations. With the original designs, there's not a lot of difference in color, especially with their snout and their chests with Bonnie and Freddy. But with the Help Wanted designs, Freddy's snout and chest were a lot more whiter, like a creamy color. And Bonnie's was the same, with him being white and also him being blue instead of purple, which, by God, that's definitely one of the biggest debates I've seen in the FNAF community since what is Mangle's gender. But, they definitely did stick a lot more closer to the colorations of their Help Wanted designs. Now, these next few predictions are more on the negative side of the movie and things that I hope wouldn't happen. So starting off with it relying too much on jump scares, it did not. Oh, thank God. But let me tell you, I thought there was going to be a lot of jump scares in this movie, considering probably one of the most iconic aspects to any of the Five Nights games is the jump scares. And there would actually hardly any. They didn't actually overdo them. Dare I say, there wasn't enough jump scares. They really underutilized the jump scare factor in this movie. There were hardly any, actually. There was probably only about maybe 3 or 4 jump scares at most in this movie, and half of them were all of goddamn Balloon Boy. Then again, the jump scares didn't have to be what the movie needed to depend on to make the movie scary, but, considering it's Five Nights at Freddy's, you would have expected a lot more jump scares. Now, this is probably the most important one that I hoped wouldn't get checked off, and that is that the movie won't live up to the hype. And thankfully, it did live up to the hype. I can gladly say it was definitely worth the wait. I'm glad that my expectations were met. I didn't leave that cinema disappointed. Up next was if the movie will actually be scary. I mean, kinda, but I'm on the fence about this one. I don't know if I would say it was scary. There were a few moments in the movie where it did make me feel a little bit tense. There was a little bit of tension in this movie, I will admit, but not as much as I was expecting. From the horror aspects of the movie that there was in this movie, you can see that they were trying, but it wasn't enough. There wasn't enough actual horror aspect into this movie. I feel like it was a bit underutilized. They could have definitely played around a lot more with the actual horror side to the movie. Hopefully, they will experiment and play around with it a lot more in the next movie, though. Now, this one, I was hoping I could check off the bingo list, and that is that the movie will have a really good score. And by God, it sure did. I absolutely loved the soundtrack. It was on point. The music was stellar in this movie. I don't think they could have done any better. The Newton brothers had cooked. 10 out of 10 soundtrack. Next one I have been gradually anticipating over time, and that is that the puppet will make an appearance. It didn't. We didn't get the puppet. Then again, I feel like if the movie did have the puppet in it, they'd have to try and explain the story behind the puppet as well, and that probably would have made things a little more complicated with the story and trying to execute, you know, the puppet's backstory as well, considering there's already quite a lot to uncover in this story already. So I can understand why the puppet isn't in this movie, although they are certainly hinting towards it, and I'll explain that a little later on. Next is the comedy in the movie is either going to be good or is going to be bad and very cheesy. I felt personally that it was good. There wasn't a lot of comedic moments or jokes made in this movie, however, when they were done, it was quite funny. I did have a good chuckle at them. Definitely one of the best moments had to be when they're all building a fort and Bonnie just collapses onto the floor and gives Abby the thumbs up to tell her he's okay. I did hear a lot of people did not like that scene, but definitely they were all just, you know, they were non-FNAF fans. I am yet to see an actual FNAF fan outright say that they disliked that scene. I personally loved that scene, I really liked it. But if you didn't like that scene, well, you're wrong. Next one is kind of one that I expected, and that is that the movie isn't gonna follow 100% of the lore to the game, and yeah, it didn't. Let alone we had new characters introduced into the story like Aunt Jane and Vanessa. And speaking of Vanessa as well, she's Afton's daughter in this movie. That is definitely not in the lore. My God, I did not expect them to do that as the twist for the movie. I was just expecting them to just do the generic, you know, oh, William Afton or Steve Raglan is actually the murderer. It's me, haha. But no, Vanessa's the daughter of William Afton. But I'm not mad about these things. I think it's good that they're trying to, you know, add new things into the story. Because like I said in the previous predictions video, if it was exactly like the game, it wouldn't be as exciting or unique and special. And, you know, it would just be things that we already know. And just like, oh, yep, we know that. So I'm glad that they're branching off a little bit to create its own story, but staying very true to the original source. Next up was Golden Freddy appearing near the end of the movie. Yes! We do see Goldie. He does appear, however, I wouldn't say near the end, but I'd say instead in the last act. Golden Freddy first appears in Mike's house when Aunt Jane is babysitting Abby after she thinks Mike is going to be giving her away and she won't come out of her room because she's upset. As Jane sits down watching TV, Golden Freddy can be seen behind her and he gives her a drubbing. And now Aunt Jane has perished. And then they take a taxi with Corey Kenshin, and that's pretty much it. You see Abby and Goldie outside the pizzeria after that, and then he's gone for the rest of the movie. Technically, he's in it a lot more, but not the actual animatronic, it's just the ghost kid of Golden Freddy. I am, however, just a little bit disappointed in the lack of screen time that Golden Freddy had, as I feel like he should have had a lot more, especially in the final act of the movie. I'll get into that in just a second. Next up was references to the first games, being with like cameras and hallucinations and stuff like that. And yes, there were plenty of references. Then again, this does fall into the same category as Easter eggs, so if the Easter eggs are going to happen, so is the references, because they kind of are the same thing. Next up is a pretty big one, and that is that Freddy does the Toror March, and the power goes out. Nope, it didn't happen. This is probably one of my biggest complaints about this movie. It is a very, very missed opportunity for something like this, since Freddy's Toror March is probably one of the most iconic things about Five Nights at Freddy's. Everyone instantly would recognize the game from just that song, and to not incorporate it into the movie is a little disappointing. Then we have the FNAF 1 animatronics aren't the only ones to appear. This was correct, but not who I was expecting to see. Obviously, we had Spring Bonnie, or as he's originally referred to, as the Yellow Rabbit. Technically, he isn't a FNAF 1 character, since he isn't actually seen in the very first game. We also got Ella, the doll from the novel series and from the Fazbear Frights book 1:35 AM, who appeared as a Springlock suit. That was something I didn't expect. And then we also got a glimpse of Shadow Freddy. His suit can be seen on the floor next to the one and only Sparky the dog. That's right. A hoax character that is fan-made has slipped its way into the movie. How's this happened? That is dedication, right? Hats off to you for that one, Blumhouse. Right, now we are down to our last 3 predictions. And these are some juicy ones. Starting off, William Afton gets springlocked at the climax. Oh boy, yes he does! We got the springlock scene, alright. And to think some people were doubting that this would happen. Look how silly you are now. Everyone, look at this goofball. He thought he was doing something funny here. He thought he was right. William gets surrounded by the 4 animatronics after Abby reveals the truth to them and he gets exposed. After Afton tries to stand his ground and belittle them, he goes and calls them rotten little beasts. It says how small they are. That was a little funny. And then the cupcake jumps at him and then takes a bite off of the suit, and then boom! The spring locks go off, and before William Afton can put his Spring Bonnie mask back on, he of course only had one thing to say.
I always come back.
Come on, you couldn't have given him a better line to finish off than that. There was no way he was not going to be saying that. I will admit though, having the cupcake be the one to cause the spring locks to go off is interesting. I would have rather maybe Golden Freddy appears instead for one more time, and Golden Freddy is the one that sets him off, because that would make a little more sense. Second to last prediction was probably my most far-fetched and most jokey prediction, which was that the Living Tombstones Five Nights at Freddy's song will play during the credits. And yes, it did happen! They played the song in the credits. I genuinely wasn't even being serious about this prediction, and yet they did it! And the last prediction on the list is the ending or a post-credit scene will tease a sequel. And yes, we are absolutely getting a sequel. So the ending takes us back to Freddy Fazbear's after the place crumbles down after the animatronics take away William Afton after he gets springlocked, and we see the ghost kid of Golden Freddy standing by a door watching over William Afton as he struggles for dear life inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. But he is still alive. This can only mean one thing. Springtrap is coming. And then we also got a post-credit scene with Corey Kenshin back in the taxi asleep, and then he gets spooked by the Balloon Boy figure. So that might be hinting towards Balloon Boy making an appearance in the next movie. But who knows. Then during the credits, after the FNAF 1 song plays, we can actually hear the puppet's music box playing in the credits. And not to mention, at the end, the same voice from the Save Them minigame starts spelling out the letters to Come Find Me. I 100% think the puppet is definitely making an appearance in the next movie. Guaranteed. There we have it. Only 6 of my predictions didn't come true. And thankfully, majority of those are predictions I didn't want to happen, so I am relieved that this came out to a very positive result. Now, I will say again, even as a fan of the franchise myself, I do think this movie has its flaws. The writing, especially in some moments, could have been done better. Especially with Vanetta, I feel like they probably had the most iffy writing with her character. And by all means, I'm not saying that the actress of Vanessa, Elizabeth Lale, was the problem. She did a great job at the role. It's just a matter of how she was written. But from the perspective of someone who isn't a Five Nights fan, I can understand why this movie wouldn't appeal to you and why you probably won't like it. However, as a fan of the franchise, I very much enjoyed this movie. It was absolutely just one big fat love letter to the community. I very much enjoyed it. It was definitely worth the wait. And I'm 100% looking forward to what they're going to do for the next movie. But overall, I'd give this movie probably an 8 out of 10. It is very enjoyable and a very, very fun movie to watch. But it's not perfect. It has room for improvement. So, there we go. What did you think of the FNAF movie? Did you like it as much as I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys thought. Well, that's it from me. I will catch you on the flip side.